Many people support big lobby organizations to fight for their constitutional freedoms. Many of these groups are unprincipled and corrupt, but people support them anyway because they think it's the best option. They think that all of these fights are expensive, are tough, and are only for the experts.
But at T.Rex Arms, we believe that all it takes to influence politics are small, motivated groups of individuals, and that every citizen has a responsibility to be involved. So earlier this year, we tried an experiment in our home state of Tennessee.
And on July 8th, 2019, the governor signed our bill into law, eliminating a 82-year-old unconstitutional tax on ammunition. In this video, we'll explain how we went from casual conversations about politics to getting a tax cut signed into law.
Our story basically starts when a bunch of guys and girls from T.Rex got together and started discussing what we wanted to do in Tennessee politics. Basically, in order to accomplish anything, you're going to need some people that are willing to commit time, energy, and money to making a political objective a reality. The second thing you need is a political objective. Now, one problem that we see a lot of people run into is they start talking about legal reform and they say, I want to make this law or that law or do this or that. And they really are ignorant of the legal framework of the state in which they live. This is to the Tennessee Code Annotated. This is effectively the law of the state of Tennessee. Originally, we had several different laws that we were looking at changing or making, but we ended up settling on Title 70, Chapter 3, Tennessee's ammunition tax. There were a couple reasons for this. Some of the ideas that we had for laws, we just never were able to hammer out the language well enough to actually make it something that could be passed. Whereas this one had clear constitutional problems, taxing a right. It also had clear unfairnesses in it, where everyone was being taxed for ammunition that was bought, but the money was only being used to support basically hunting programs. All we were seeking to do was delete this chunk of the Tennessee Code. Tennessee Representative Clay Doggett was willing to help push this bill and became its chief sponsor.
They were taxing our right, but yet calling it a privilege. And so if I could do anything to change that, I would, and I was very thankful we were able to get this through.
The tax was basically a stamp that was applied to every box of ammunition that was put up for sale in the state of Tennessee. This generated about $450,000 last year for the TWRA. But that was not pure profit. The TWRA had administrative costs. They had to print the stamps, ship the stamps. They had to put agents in stores regularly to do audits to make sure that there were actually stamps on boxes of ammo. They had to train those agents. So there were costs that came off of that $450,000. We also discovered that retailers were spending something around $200,000 a year, mostly on employees, to just physically take the stamps and put them on individual boxes of ammo as they were put up for sale. We took all these points that we had on the costs of this, the revenue that it brought in, the state's costs to retailers, because that's all ultimately cost to Tennesseans. And we put it on our list of talking points, basically our arguments for why the bill should be passed.
So the way this works generally is a special interest group comes up with an idea for a bill that has something to do with money. They go to a lobbying firm, pay them a lot of money, and then lobbyists go to politicians, and the lobbyists are mercenaries. They're only interested in the money, and most politicians are also only interested in money, so that's the pull.
David Tucker was one of our very first employees. This year we registered him as a lobbyist, and we sent him to Nashville to work on repealing the ammo tax.
At the beginning of the year, I anticipated it would cost us about $15,000 to work in politics for the year. It ended up coming in just below $11,000. For us, the main costs were in personnel. It was about $7,500 to hire me for 3.5 months of full-time work, $1,500 to hire a part-time researcher, and about $1,200 in other expenses.
If you can find a politician who is a real statesman, who is interested in helping his constituents and upholding the Constitution, that guy actually is going to want to work with constituents that are interested in the same things. And they're very excited when they meet someone who is genuine about these goals.
But to me, what was most exciting, it was eliminating a tax on Tennesseans that have a constitutional right to have their arms, to have their guns. I thought it was a great idea.
Most of the legislation in state houses come from think tanks, because representatives simply don't have time to research out the issues. Most people's suggestions to their representatives are basically, I have this problem, you need to make a law. So when you come, you need to have better solutions to bring to the table.
Most lobbyists, they get you for 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops. They just want to bend your ear, tell you about this or that, and then go on to the next member. David was very, if I needed something, research, whatever, get me some numbers on this, he he would do it.
Once you have a sponsor, they'll need to get the bill drafted in conformity with state laws, and then you'll often want to get outside legal counsel to look over that bill before it goes into law.
You need to make sure that it says exactly what you want it to say when you go through, because it's real easy to get it turned back to you from the attorneys and you say, well, it's close enough. Well, close enough that only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. And then when it comes to legislation, that could be something that could turn into a constitutional challenge or completely destroying your idea and it never passing out of a committee. So I think the language is extremely important.
In most states, a bill's going to have to make it through 4 branches of government to be able to pass: the House of Representatives, the Senate, the governor, and the bureaucrats. And unfortunately, any of those groups, especially the bureaucrats, are going to be able to stop your bill.
When you watch stuff on TV on the news and you hear about the bureaucrats and the swamp, and at the state level, I think it's the same, if not even worse. People that work here in state agencies, they were here before we came and they'll be here after we're gone. And they know that when it comes down to talk about taking money away from an agency, they'll come out of the woodwork to pay you a visit.
In order to help your legislation gain momentum, you'll need to get other legislators to co-sponsor with your initial sponsor. And you can also have people call in and go around and just try to convince the other legislators that this bill is a good idea. The next thing you'll have to do is work your bill through the committee process. Our bill, being simple, didn't have a lot of switching or backstabbing, but normally you'd have to meticulously watch your bill and count votes as it goes through that process.
Politics doesn't really have to be cutthroat. Even though issues are important and people's lives hang in the balance, it doesn't have to be fights to get media attention. For example, even though we at T.Rex Arms have disagreed with the NRA in the past on how things are run at the national level, their Nashville lobbyist was a tremendous help to us, and it was great to work with her.
You might be thinking, why all the bother over a small tax? 10 cents a box, $400,000 a year. It's a drop in the bucket compared to everything else. But for us, it was a training operation. We wanted to see if it was possible for political amateurs to get in there and actually make a change. We discovered it was. And second, and this is the more important part, for us this was about principle. If it's lawful and right for the state of Tennessee to put a 10-cent tax on ammunition, they could just as easily put a 10,000% tax on ammunition, effectively banning it by just taxing it out of existence.
So Americans tend to be very focused on politics at the national level, and there's reasons for that. We have a presidential election coming up, which is looking pretty crazy. A lot of our freedoms are being lost at the federal level, and the federal government is bigger than it should be. But that's no excuse for neglecting local politics for several reasons. Number one, battles that are won and lost at the local level those are all ammunition, ironically enough, for the fights that are happening in Washington. But also because the national players tend to come from local legislatures. And so this is our opportunity to make allies, but also present fights to these local reps. Fights that force them to take hard stands so that the voters can see where they stand on issues and make sure that they're actually doing the right things.
Our experiment worked. We forayed into politics, we had a small victory, and we learned a lot of good lessons.
So why does this ammo tax repeal matter? Because it proves that you can do something. There's nothing we had that you don't have or can't get. $11,000 is less than 8 NRA lifetime memberships. With patient effort and teamwork, you can accomplish something.
And just like we believe that all citizens have a responsibility to protect themselves and others, we also believe they have a responsibility to protect the Constitution, to uphold the good laws, and also abolish the bad ones. But don't think this work is going to just happen on its own. You have a responsibility to get involved. And one of the biggest problems we have in our society today is all people do is complain, vote, and complain. So be sure you communicate with your reps. Make sure that the people fighting against our freedoms know that you are watching, but also so that our friends who are fighting for the right laws know that they have allies.
Politics is volatile and things change very quickly, but there's a lot of opportunities if you're ready for them. And if you want good changes made in state government, you're probably going to have to do it yourself.
We'll continue to monitor politics and get involved where we can, dedicating time and effort to make America a better, safer place. And we trust you all will do the same.